If you're a junior developer entering into your first coding interview, you may be wondering what to expect. From the company's point of view, the coding interview does at least 3 things. It checks if you know the basics. It checks if you can talk about the code that you write. And it also screens out those who can't code at all. A famous, or maybe infamous, interview question is FizzBuzz. It started out many years ago as a joke, but it's still important to understand. FizzBuzz does 3 important things. It checks if you know the fundamentals of programming. It requires a for loop and an array, and it does not require any extra clever thinking. Let's have a look at FizzBuzz. To follow along, click on the link, and it will take you to the website LeetCode. Be sure to register or sign in before starting. Let's take a quick tour of what we can see on the screen. Over here we have the name of the question. And here we have some details about what the question is asking. Gives us 3 examples. And here we have the actual code and a space for us to write our own code. This is editable. Instead of Python, I'm going to choose JavaScript. Down below, you can see we have test cases. And the test cases give us input for us to implement our code against. Let's take a careful look at what the question is asking. So in FizzBuzz, we are given a number, n, and our task is to make an array of size n with 4 conditions. The first condition is that the array will consist of a series of numbers 1 through n. So let's look at the example. If n equals 6, our array should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Simple enough. Second condition is if the number is divisible by 3, substitute fizz for the number. So instead of 3, we get fizz, and instead of 6, we get fizz. So the array will now be 1, 2, fizz, 4, 5, fizz. Right? So if the number is divisible by 5, substitute buzz for that number. So 5 is going to now be buzz. So we've got 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz, fizz. Finally, the last condition is that if the number is divisible by 3 and 5, substitute FizzBuzz for that number. So 3 and 5, that would be 15. So the 15th number we're going to have to take, let's take n equals 16, for an example. The number 15 would be substituted out, and we would get FizzBuzz instead. So the output for n equals 16 would be 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz, fizz, 7, 8, 9, buzz, 11, fizz, 13, 14, fizz, buzz, 16. If you didn't quite get that, feel free to rewind and watch that last section again. It's not designed to be too difficult, but it is designed to be just complicated enough so as to be confusing. Now that we understand the problem, let's try and tackle it. I'm going to start out with the first part, which is making an array. In JavaScript, this is how we make an array. And I mentioned there were 2 parts to this. There was a for loop and an array. So let's make the for loop. here, let's pop, or rather push, every number from 1 to n onto the array. And we'll return the array. At this point, we can go ahead and run it. Of course, we get the wrong answer. But what did we get? So we get the input was 3, so n equals 3. And the output is 0, 1, and 2. So what we're going to have to do is we want to start with 1, 2, 3 rather than 0, 1, and 2. So let's add a variable that j equals I plus 1. And we'll push j onto it. Let's give that a try. Of course, we still have the wrong answer, but let's see if it's getting any closer. Okay, here we are. So we start out with numbers 1, 2, and 3, which is what we want. And what we actually want is we want the numbers 1, 2, fizz. Okay. So how do we get the numbers 1, 2, and fizz? Let's see. For that we need an if statement. If, let's say, j divided by 3 equals 1, array.push, we want to push fizz. Else, let's take away this, and we'll just push the number. So if j divided by 3 is equal to 1, we'll say fizz. Otherwise, we'll just say it's the number. Let's try that and run it. Still get the wrong answer, but it's quite close. We have fizz in the right place and fizz in the right place here. It's going to want this to be the strings. So let's do a little trick to make those into strings. I can just do this in JavaScript to make it into a string. This is a little quirk of JavaScript. Case 1. So case 1 is right. We have 1, 2, and fizz. Okay. Case 2 is wrong. And let's see, case 3 is also wrong. Let's focus on the fizz part. So we have a fizz, and we're missing this fizz. So 6 should also be a fizz. How do we get the 6 to work? Well, how about if j is divisible by 3, or j is divisible by 6, how does that go? Still wrong answer. But now I have 2 fizzes, but then the 9 is not divisible, so let's try that. J divided by 9 equals 1. So this should be 9. When j is 9, we should be getting fizz. Okay, 9 is now fizz. And how about 12? 12 is also divisible by 3. How about 12? J is divisible by 12 is divisible by 3 as well. All right. So we have all the fizzes working. But what happens if we go up one? What about 18 or 21 or anything else divisible by 3? Well, let's introduce a new way to handle this, and that is called a modulus. So if j mod 3 equals 0, we should get a similar answer for this fizz. And we have all our fizzes in the right places. 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15 isn't quite right. Okay. Let's do the answer for, let's get the 5s now. Get the 5s to be buzzes. So 5 and 10 should both be a buzz. So we'll say else if j modulo 5 is 0, we're going to push buzz onto the right. Let's give this a try. So now the buzzes are in the right place. Still have this fizz here. But I need the FizzBuzz to work for mod 15. So for that, I'm going to put this in the start. So if j mod 15 equals 0, we're going to do array.push FizzBuzz. And we will turn that into an else. And the reason why I'm doing 15 is because if it's divisible by 3 and it's divisible by 5, it's going to be also divisible by 15. Okay, let's run that. And we have our test case accepted. So these are just the simple test cases. Let's go and submit the code and see if it is accepted. And here it is accepted. And it gives us some details, but we're not really interested in those. All we care about is that it's accepted. And this is how we do FizzBuzz on LeetCode. So as I mentioned before, FizzBuzz started out as a sort of a joke. It's fairly easy to handle, fairly easy to come up with the answer to. Even if you haven't coded before, I hope that you've been able to follow along at least basically what I've been doing. But it is extremely fundamental, and if you can do FizzBuzz, you can get started on a whole range of other problems that you can start out with the easy ones, and they're labeled easy, medium, and hard. And you can just go and try to do any other sort of problem that you'd like to try. And that's how you get started on these coding interview questions.